All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast. I am your main host, Spencer Sutton, and I've got Matthew Whitaker and Gray Hall here. Guys, welcome back to the show.
So
were you mocking
here,
me? Matthew,
partners in crime. Yeah, no, I've heard you say that now enough that I knew exactly how you were going to start the thing, and I just mouthed the words as you were saying.
All right, I'm going to change it up from here on out. Gray, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I was looking on the podcast on, I think, Spotify, and a friend was looking at it. And I realized my name is listed last. So we really are just, Spencer's, of course, is first in the queue, Matthew. So me and you are, we know where we stand.
It's also listed as Gary Hall instead of Gray Hall. Sorry about that.
I know. I should just legally change my name to Gary at this point.
People are totally looking for you on Twitter and LinkedIn right now as Gary Hall. And some random person in Middle America is getting a lot of LinkedIn requests.
I'll tell you,
they are.
Whenever somebody gets my name wrong, it's always Stewart. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's just strange. It's always going to be Stewart if they get my name wrong.
Yeah, mine's Michael.
Yeah.
And I know I've been around Gray enough to know his is Gary. Like, there are so many people that say Gary.
Yeah. Gary's the written form. Greg is the audible form. So I consistently get those two. So I might just kind of add those as like alter names.
I'll add those to the podcast notes.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, can I make a selfish request before we get going?
Yeah.
I am on Twitter now, and I only have 18 Twitter followers. And I would love it if anybody's on Twitter to follow, I think it's Evernest _MW, and follow me on Twitter.
You didn't really make it very searchable. Like, your name's not even in the Twitter handle.
Should I have done that?
I don't know. I'm not really on Twitter. So
Matthew needs the help. I've got 10x the followers. They're big dog at 180 over here. So Matthew needs the help.
I do. Yeah. I also follow Gray Hall. He's just at Gray Hall, right?
Yeah. Original 2012 is where it came from.
So many people tell me I need to get on Twitter. So I did it. Well, I did it a few months back, and then I gave it up, and then now I'm back again. So trying to put out some SFR style content out there.
And speaking of SFR style content, we got our Jim.
We've got somebody here, Jim Strickland. Yes.
Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, guys. Sometimes people confuse me and they call me Jim and M for whatever reason. I don't know why, but it's Jim.
Jim and M. Jim, listen, we're excited that you're here, and there's a reason for that. Like, we just had you on a podcast where we were talking about Jackson, Mississippi real estate and the market there, but now we are embarking on this new quest. Matthew, why don't you tell us a little bit about what the audience can expect with this series that we're about to do?
Yeah, I'm so pumped. A few months back, we had this idea that we were going to go around to all our markets and buy houses in the markets and have, a YouTube / podcast kind of show where we go and we show how we bought the house, the numbers, kind of a behind the scenes look. We're going to go to some of these houses before they're renovated and walk through them and talk about what we're going to do to the house, and then show kind of an after. So the whole idea is I think what investors have is a black box. They think of investing as a black box. And what we want to do is kind of shine some light in the black box where we can show, what it looks like from an acquisition standpoint, how we found the deal, show the renovation, and then show the rent and what ends up happening. And then as we're going, we're going to essentially aggregate a spreadsheet of these deals that we're going to share with everybody, and they can kind of see what's happening to the portfolio that we're building. And I started a entity called Hulkin, and people are going to wonder where I got that name. My son, when he was really young, we have a statue called Vulcan in Birmingham that overlooks the city, and he got the name wrong and calls it Hulkin, or did call it Hulkin. He's old enough now to know better, but and I always said if I was going to start a new entity, I would call it Hulkin. So I did, and now we've got Hulkin LLC that's out buying houses across America and Evernest footprint.
All right. So the first house is going to be in Jackson, Mississippi. And I thought, Matthew, you were going to say that your new entity was Yellow Bell. I thought for sure you'd put that to good use at some point. But Hulkin LLC. So we bought our first house in Jackson, and we did that. When was closing on this property?
It was on February the 2nd, I think. Checking now. Yeah, February 2nd.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So why don't we just kind of jump in? We told Jim we wanted to do this. We said, Jim, find us a house, and almost like any investor would, right? Like, hey, we find us a house. We want to buy a house and renovate it and rent it. And so Jim kind of stuck that in his back pocket. And actually, first you brought us another house. So let's talk about that. And let's kind of go through real quick what happened with that house. So Jim, you found a house from a wholesaler. Why don't you kind of give us the background on the first house?
Yeah, I love this, guys. Like, just a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how to or where to invest in Jackson, Mississippi, and then you immediately put your money where your mouth is and are leading by example, showing us how to do it. So it's a lot of fun. So our first house we found was from a wholesaler. And do we want to talk about how we found that, or we want to talk about the first house first?
Let's talk about the first house.
Yeah, the first house that we didn't.
Because I think it's important for people to know that, hey, just because you make an offer doesn't mean it's necessarily going to work out, right?
Exactly. I get that a lot. Just today I had a conversation with an investor who didn't realize once you get into a contract, if the rehab or inspection comes back and bad, that you can get out. But so the first house was in an area that we didn't absolutely love, but the numbers worked out great. They made sense. It would be a cash flow property, but we weren't in love with it. I don't think any four of us were.
So why weren't we in love with it? Yeah,
because of the area. It was in South Jackson. It was kind of a C or below neighborhood. It wasn't, it would have made sense numbers, but it wasn't something we just fell in love with.
And this was like a pocket. So I think there was kind of some C areas. This was like a pocket of a little bit kind of better, but you still got to look at the surroundings. So I think that's kind of like a word of advice. There's a lot of kind of new subdivisions being built on the outskirts of town. This one wasn't brand new, but it was kind of a little bit newer. And what's around it, because I think that does affect the rental value and all of that kind of stuff. And so I think that some of it, like, hey, it looked good enough and we were going to, kind of go down this path, but that's just a little bit more context kind of about the area. But
exactly,
Jim it was a little bit better pocket than some of the areas that might be kind of C-.
Yeah. South Jackson gets a bad rep. A lot of people avoid it altogether, but this one in particular was in a pretty good street and a small pocket of neighborhood, exactly like Gray said. But we went under contract. We felt pretty good about it, but the projected rehab came way over our budget. And so we were,
what do we budget for? Do you remember what we went under contract at?
I'd have to pull that up once.
I think
while he's doing that, I want to give some context. Look, I mean, investing, part of buying a rental portfolio is buying good deals. They can't all be great. And so we said, hey, this is definitely one that meets our numbers, meets our criteria. We're going to put this in our rental portfolio. Jim said, hey, we weren't excited about it. But it was like a single deal. And I think part of the lesson here too is when you're buying houses, most of what you're doing is buying singles and over and over again. So every now and then you're going to hit a home run, but mostly what you're doing is buying singles.
And I think you do need to know the area. I think that's the benefit of knowing somebody local, because like looking on a map, you might just kind of like whole zip code say no, but there are good pockets in there. And I think that's the reason we kind of moved forward on it. Like, hey, we felt good enough about the area to do that. But yeah, look, hitting singles. And I think that's what we're going to try to show here, that every deal is not going to be a home run. The one that we ended landing up on is going to be a pretty good deal. And we're pretty excited about it. Jim, did you get those numbers pulled up just for context? We
were under contract for $125,000 on this home, and we projected about $15,000, and it ended up being over $25,000 for the projected rehab. And a lot of times with these off-market deals, we're not going to always have access to get inside and see the home ourselves. And so, but as a buyer,
before you go under contract is what you
until you put under contract.
Correct. So a lot of times, we use pictures, we use any information or disclosures that we have available, and before we go under contract. But you're still protected. We went under contract. Our inspection came back more than we expected, and so it ended up working out great.
And Jim, who inspected it for us and came up with that $25,000 budget?
Yes. So we have an awesome transaction, or I guess inspection coordinator in Craig. which you guys have met in our podcast. And he used a contractor named Peyton for this particular one. He's got a great relationship with contractors around town.
Yeah, so I think we got it inspected. So we did a normal inspection, which is always kind of good practice. They're kind of trained inspectors, but what an inspector is not going to give you is how much does this cost to fix. And so one thing we've always got to do is also get a contractor in there there's kind of two ways to approach it. One is do the inspection first. And if there's major issues like foundation, roof, that are just going to completely blow off the numbers, you don't have to, send the contractor out there. I think we sent him out there at the same time or tried to line that up just because we were trying to operate with speed. But the contractor can get out there and give you, the turn costs. They can look at some of the major items. And then a lot of times what we'll do is add to that scope if there are major items maybe found on the inspection. And so most people talk about the inspection. I think it's really good to have your hard numbers from a contractor before you end your diligence period. And that's what we did here. And was there room to negotiate on that deal?
There wasn't. It was enough. We were enough off that we just decided to cut it.
Yeah. So the cost there, an inspection is going to range from $250 to $400, depending on kind of market and the size. And look, we spent that money and it is what it is, but you kind of got to have a holistic view. So don't let that, that money probably saved us from not buying a house where, we wouldn't want to be, or the overall numbers weren't going to work. And so don't have this kind of sunk cost fallacy that just because you spent the money, you have to move forward on it. And we kind of applied that here and we just kind of cut ties and we paid for that and we're on to the next deal.
One thing I will say is if you're an investor and you're buying properties in your own market, like you're buying them in the city, you've identified a location, you're doing this, there'll come a time where, you won't have to have a contractor go out to every property with you. Like you will be able to go out and eyeball it. You'll be able to tell like, this is how much it's going to cost me to fix this, to get it rent ready. But most definitely, if you're buying out of state, you want to have that partner on the ground, verifying all these things with you. So Jim, what happened was this one fell through, but you were already talking to the same wholesaler about another house. And so we were able to kind of have this as a kind of a backup. So tell us a little bit about how this deal came about.
Yes. So we had a backup houses. I've always got a ton of backup houses with all my relationships around town, our off-market wholesalers. But we had this in mind, and this one's in Madison. It's a great area that we've talked about. Best schools in town and the Jackson surrounding areas, B+ to A+ neighborhoods.
And this is on the kind of northwest side of town, just kind of above Jackson, if you're looking at the map. And so you can Google where Madison is, just kind of get contacts. We'll pull up the map here in a second, kind of show exactly where this house is.
For those of you on YouTube watching it, we'll do that.
And talk about, so this wholesaler previously and kind of talk about that. What's your relationship with, why did he pitch the deal to us?
Yeah. So I got a good relationship with him from my previously I worked in rentals in a property management company. And so I had a lot of great relationships with the wholesalers. So we've developed a friendship and a business connection. And so he is also very aware through his connection with me of Evernest. And he's got a lot of respect for the company as a property management company. He believes in them and he wants to create a great relationship with us. And so that's partly why we got such a great deal. Is he could have potentially took some more time to look for another seller or listed it and paid some commissions. But he wanted to cut us a great deal for future relationships.
I think it's important too, to look inside the mind of a wholesaler. Because Spencer and I used to do this when we first got in the business. And for us, speed was so important because what was important to us is deal flow, speed with which our investors could buy these houses. And so people may say, well, why would you sell something a little bit less when you could essentially sell it for more on MLS? And the truth was we probably had that money committed to more deals in the pipeline. And so for us, it was all about going through the pipeline faster. We actually made more money by getting deals pushed through than we would by maximizing each deal, because we would miss out on the next deal based on our resources. So I think one of the cool things about somebody like Jim in a market is, we're going to help people buy MLS. We're also going to help people buy off market. I mean, you can't just rely on one source of homes. You've got to be able to rely on multiple sources of homes. And so it's very important to have somebody like a Jim in the market that has relationships that he's built over years of being in the business.
You hear that a lot. it's a relationship game, and this is kind of an example of it. And I think in any market you kind of build. I think the wholesale, like knowing that, like, hey, we've got future kind of deal flow and they want to work with you. I think that's a really important thing. And then just getting to know people. I mean, if you're local in a market, finding an agent who has relationship with wholesalers or finding wholesalers, that's what Jim's done. I think it's like provides a lot of value to clients that he works with. And so, yeah, it's just a relationship game at the end of the day. And people want to like work with people, one, that they know they can close. So what's your reputation? Are you always getting in there and always beating down the wholesaler, or you're not able to close, you're not able to perform? So all of those things kind of play into it, and where you get to a place where wholesalers will give you first look at deals, which is kind of what every investor wants.
Can I say something right here? I think it's really important. Real estate is very simple. It is three things. It is hustle, it is networking, and it is reputation. If you do those three things in real estate, you're going to be really successful. And so, that's one of the things we talk to our agents about. Is one of the things we talk about here at Evernest. In fact, at Evernest, hustle is one of our core values. And I'm telling you, I've never met a person that's been in real estate for some period of time that didn't exhibit those three traits that wasn't successful.
I would love to take the credit for the relationships built and trust and hustle. But reputation, the third thing you said, Matthew, was definitely the key. I got to harp on that again. You guys, honestly, with Evernest makes my job really easy. Wholesalers come to me because of that reputation that Evernest has.
Well, that's good to know.
Well, that is good. All right. So let's talk about the house.
Don't pay me less though.
Yeah. So we're let's talk about a little bit about the house. It's a 3-bedroom and 2.5 bath house, right?
Yeah, so it's a 4-bedroom, 2.5.
Sorry, 4-bedroom.
Yeah, 4-bedroom, 2,500 square feet. So it's a big house.
You would think since I bought it, I would know.
Well, not only since you bought it, but you also walked the property.
I have been to it too. I don't know when this is going to get put out there, but I have been to it too.
4-bed, 2.5 bath, 2,500 square feet. That's bigger. Kind of the standard down the middle of the road is like a 3-2, 1,500 square foot house. I mean, some of the challenges is, and we ask these questions, hey, what's the flooring going to be? The paint, you got to think about those because they're, a lot of times priced on a per square foot basis. Even think about a roof. If you've got a multi-layer house that only has the square footage of maybe, 1,500 per floor, so that's 3,000 total. The roof size is going to be a lot smaller, but if you've got kind of a laid out, so this is a bigger house, it's kind of a 1-level house. And so you just have to factor those in. It's not like, hey, don't do this deal. But also one thing that we preach a lot about here is kind of like buy standard for the neighborhood. And I think that this fits really well into that. This is kind of the standard house for Madison. It's a bigger house, but I think that kind of, good school systems, and it's got a lot of space. And so I think those were a lot of the reasons we liked it, but you've also kind of got to watch out for that bigger square footage.
I'm probably not going to buy this house in a C- area. That's a bigger house, right? So and probably in those areas, the bigger houses are outliers. So you're right. This definitely fits the neighborhood and top schools. When we were there, I tend to think this is an A neighborhood. So that's why it started to make sense to us.
I would love to see the numbers. Let's.
Talk about that. What did the wholesaler kind of pitch it to you at? And talk. I'll share my screen and we can kind of go through the numbers.
Well, he initially pitched it for $225. So if he's watching, we were able to get it for $195. Not to tap.
Thank you for the discount if you're watching, Mr. Wholesaler.
Yeah,
we'll buy more.
And we went back and forth a little bit, but again, that goes back to that same conversation that we had. That he was willing to move forward with us and create that relationship, and so we got it for $195. He was asking for $225, and it was let's see,
I'll walk through the numbers kind of in detail here. Just give people, if you're watching on YouTube, this is kind of where the house is. And so it's kind of on that northwest side. You got Madison originally up here, good school systems. You saw the video. We kind of show some of the neighborhood in there. And then we'll kind of go through the numbers here. So asking price, I guess we could put 215 in here or 225, but we got it at 195. Rehab budget.
Can I butt in there? I think one of the things that people need to understand, like, we're not opposed to paying what they're asking, right? Like, we only, like, if a wholesaler brings us a good deal, we're willing to pay what they, so don't always feel like we need to beat down at being on the wholesaler side. I would sell less to people that always beat me down from a price standpoint. So if we're getting a good deal, and if we thought we were getting the right deal based on our numbers, we would have paid that number. It just didn't fit our buy box based on that higher sales price.
That's right.
Real quick with this, and with the negotiations, along with what Matthew just said, is part of my negotiation with him was, this is a little bit out of the norm, a 2,500 square foot house. It's not exactly it's not exactly what we would prefer to start. But that is one of the reasons why we were able to negotiate down.
And kind of running through this, I'll kind of just run y'all through. So purchase at 195. The rehab budget is 2,550. And so I think we've got another podcast to listen to that where we kind of go in depth. This originally we budgeted 20K, and then it came back at about $23,000. And so we went through, made some modifications. I think we did a couple upgrades. We're going to do quartz countertops, stuff that was kind of, I think a value add. And so we upgraded a couple of things, and the total numbers would be about $25,000. I think one of the reasons we didn't go back and negotiate, I think this was played into the negotiation, but one of the things we'll talk about is the ARV. So the after repair value. And based on the comps that Jim ran, this is going to be at least $260,000. And so you can see right off the bat that we've got, about $220,000 in the deal plus some closing costs, where we're at about 223. So we're going to have about $40,000 of equity right off the bat. So that's one of the reasons that we really liked it, and we kind of felt comfortable with moving forward, is it gave us that equity cushion in there. And that's just always good to have, especially if you want to pull out money. That's kind of why we really like this deal.
Jim told me I was going to pay for lunch next time I was in Jackson.
So kind of looking at the high numbers here. So about $3,000 in closing costs. So we did take this down with cash, but if you're watching this YouTube video, we're going to look at this kind of what it looks like if you were financed just on a cash flow basis. Because the plan is to put debt on there. So we're going to refinance it after the renovations are done, and hopefully be able to pull out a little bit of money. And if not, then we've got a good equity cushion that's kind of left in the deal.
One thing about closing costs is I don't see real estate commission in the closing costs.
That was all built in to the 195.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So Jim's fee was kind of baked all in that, and the wholesaler's fee. And so that was kind of all baked in there. So it's a good question. Hey, on the buy side, a lot of times you're not going to see that on there. When you're selling the property, it's customary for the seller to pay those real estate commissions.
Yeah, I was just asking that for everybody else. I wasn't.
And so we'll look at the summary, and then we'll kind of dive into what the monthly cash flow looks like. So it turns out to be about a 6.24% cap rate. And so, Jim, kind of talk about what's kind of the market right now in Madison for a Class A. Is that kind of standard? Is that above? Is it below? Where does that kind of line up?
If you can get 6 or above, that's very solid. I've done some deals with good cash flow at about 5.8, 5.9. So 6.24 is great.
Yeah. And so let's kind of get into the numbers. So talk about the rent. When you were running the comps, where did you see the rent was going to be?
My safe estimate was 1,900. But I certainly believe 2,000 and 2,100 is what we can do. I typically will pitch to the investor the safe side just to protect them and to kind of give them an idea.
And I had it pulled up here, but we basically ran another program we use called Rent Range. And I had it pulled up here, but it put the rent at about $2,100. And so we kind of split the difference because there were comps there. And so we feel pretty safe that we can get about $2,000 here. And so that's where you get this $2,000 number from. Always really important to get that number on the front end. We were kind of pleasantly surprised when we did even more research. We think we can get a little bit higher, but I think it's a good thing to note. Be conservative when you're running your numbers. You don't want to trick yourself into doing a deal based on, not where you just got to deal with reality. So we got $2,000 there, and then we got some expenses in here. And I think it's kind of helpful to look at the monthly kind of breakdown. So we've got monthly rent, we've got vacancy at about 5%, which is what we're seeing pretty standard across the market. property management fees. And so there's kind of, a couple different options. I've got this pulled up, but depending on what your property manager charges, we'll kind of go over what we charge. We've got investor packages that are about 8% of your monthly management fee, but we also have some cool flat fee options. So what we plugged in here was $89 a month. And really is, if you're looking at this, hey, what works out best for you and with your kind of plan, we feel like the gold kind of the flat fee works best for us. And so we plugged in $89 a month. At 8%, that number is going to be a lot higher. It was about $160. And so there's some good savings there that help to kind of bolster the cash flow. And again, got the mortgage in there, kind of net. This is about $500 in cash flow per month. That's the really, really good deal in today's market. Seeing a lot of deals that are about $100 or $200. We're estimating about $200 in reserves. It's got a brand new HVAC system. One of the reasons we liked it, we're really kind of renovating the property. And so we've got about 10%. Of kind of monthly maintenance reserve in there. So this is after all the expenses are kind of accounted for here, is we've got a cash flow of about $500.
Yeah. And so if you're listening to this on the podcast, I want to encourage you to go over and check out this YouTube video, because you'll see the spreadsheet, and we will have a spreadsheet that you can also download at evernest.co/calculator. You can pull up and analyze your own properties.
Yeah. And just kind of looking at this again, just another way to look at it. I mean, I think the numbers that investors look at are cap rate, which looks at basically like an unlevered. So if there wasn't debt on it, and then the cash on cash is another one. So when you're financing these properties, how much cash are you putting into the property and what's your annual return, and looking at the cash flow there. And so this is a 7.93, about 8% cash on cash return. Every investor kind of has their standards, but I mean, this really kind of hit the numbers that we were pretty excited about. And I think we don't have the numbers run here, but if we're able to pull out some money, if we're able to do a refinance at that 260 number, I think that cash on cash return is going to shoot way up. And now your cash flow on a monthly basis might go down because you've got a little bit bigger mortgage to go, but it's got some upside in there, whether we kind of keep the deal as is or we're able to refinance. And it's always good to have options. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, if you're comfortable with the numbers, it's good to have the options. I think that's why we felt really kind of comfortable with this. And we're pretty excited about this being our first deal.
Yeah. And to make your point, if I don't have money in the deal and I can refinance it, which is the whole BRRRR strategy, then it's almost like an infinite cash on cash return, right? Because everything's being covered by the mortgage.
Yeah, that's totally it. And so just kind of running the numbers, like if we take that 260 ARV and then we're able to get 80% loan to value, some lenders will do 80, some will do 75%. The interest rates might be different. At the 80% mark, we get about 208 out. And then if you kind of pull, we had 223 in the deal. And so that would leave about $15,000 in the deal. And so you can kind of see on this first page over here that we put about 77 into it. And so that was, if you're financing it, that's how much you would have in the deal. And then you're able to pull out everything but 15. And so I think in today's market, it's tough to do a full BRRRR, but I think this is really good, kind of like base it, even maybe a double.
Could you put in $15,000 right there, or is that too hard?
I'll probably break the spreadsheet. But and you'd have to edit it might be a couple $100 less per month with a little bit bigger mortgage, because you'd have a mortgage of, $208,000 opposed to 195 at 25% down. So yeah, you'd have a bigger mortgage, but I think your cash on cash returns would be north of 20, which is excellent in today's market.
Yeah. All right. Anything
so we
else
did this deal. Yeah, we closed and we're going to walk through like kind of the renovation with Craig, who is our reno manager, we talked about earlier today. And we're going to kind of walk through what it looks like with this house in Madison.
Yeah. So we were actually at this house a week ago. We recorded an entire video. We spent a couple hours there walking through so that you can go to our YouTube page and check it out. You can see exactly the house, everything that we're going to do to it. We walk through the outside, the inside of the property. So I want you to go check that out. And then we have a podcast that we're going to release that, like Matthew mentioned, where we actually talk to Craig, walk through the reno budget and go kind of line item by line item what we're going to do. And what I would say is, this is kind of just the beginning, because this is what we went over. What Gray just went over with us was the spreadsheet of what we believe is going to happen. But that's just paper. That's just a spreadsheet. Yeah. So
we've already gotten some bad news, right? Like we already got a notice that there's a shed in the back and it apparently is not up to code. So we're trying to figure out how to handle that. And so those are the types of things we're going to be really transparent about, because I think it's important for people to know that it doesn't just all work out like the books say it does. It is really about, kind of sticking with the process and being willing to be flexible when things don't, always work out perfectly. So we're going to take everybody through that whole process.
That's right. And we'll come back and update you, once we have it completely finished, once we have it marketed, how much it cost us to lease it out, all of these things. And so we'll give you all those numbers. So we'll come back and look at what we projected versus what the actual was and share all that with you. And I'm going to, and we don't have this done yet, but we're going to create case studies for all of these properties that we're buying, so people can just like download a 1-page or 1 or 2 page and really see how the deal unfolded.
Yeah. And I hope this is helpful. I mean, y'all, please give us feedback. Please reach out to us. We just haven't seen a lot of people kind of go through a full deal like this. And so I think it's helpful for a lot of investors who are thinking about investing out of state. Like, what does the process entail? And so if there's other things that we're not showing or want to go in more depth in, please reach out to us. That will help us kind of put out better content. Because at the end of the day, we want to give investors the confidence to do this, because we believe in investing long-term with rentals, and, we think this is a great way to build wealth. And so we want this to be super valuable. And so, give us feedback on if y'all like it, if there's other things y'all want us to go into. We're kind of doing this on the fly, and we're excited to build a rental portfolio and just kind of show what that looks like, all the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Hopefully not too much ugly.
Well, hey, but if it is, if it's there, we'll let you know. Well, Jim, man, thanks for being back on the show with us. We just had you on talking all about Jackson, but now we're actually in the market buying property. So we appreciate you being here. Thanks for your time.
I appreciate you guys. My pleasure.
All right, everybody. That is it for this episode. Make sure you check out our YouTube channel. Subscribe if you want to get notifications of our new videos, because we're going to be releasing a lot over the next several months. And come back and join us next week on another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast. And please leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. It helps other investors find the show. And if you're saying good things about it, then there's a great chance that they'll listen in too. All right, we'll see you next week.